Thank you, Elaine. First of all, good morning. I'd like to welcome you all this morning. I wanted to also thank you for those of you who have helped me in the last couple of weeks from texts and calls and everything else. I did break my leg a couple of weeks ago, so that's why I'm not up there. Well, that's recorded. So thank you so much. It's been a wonderful couple of weeks from that perspective. So this morning I found this recently on Facebook and couldn't resist sharing it with you. How do you become a you? My response: credit a fundamentalist Baptist recently arrived in Chicago from Tennessee who volunteered to teach Sunday school. He told us fifth grade boys that each needed to take a leap of faith to avoid a chasm from hell. After arguing with him without success, I told my parents I was done with Sunday school. Didn't get away with that one though, but I could choose. The Unitarians were one block less to walk with no special leaps required. That was by John Adrian Keohane from the Unitarian and Universalists Around the World Facebook page.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, thank you to Liam and Henry for these beautiful flowers, which will last us forever now. So. The aesthetics committee can let go. No, beautiful flowers, thank you. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I'm Corey Barnes, your worship associate for today. We come together each Sunday morning as a community of seekers. Seekers of what's important in our lives, seekers of understanding in the face of uncertainty and loss, seekers of forgiveness for our shortcomings, seekers of gratitude for the unexpected gifts we receive from all around us. We gather in awe of the beauty of nature and the mysteries of the universe. But most importantly, we come together as seekers of community, of love and empowerment, celebrating our search for truth and meaning in our daily lives. Our guest speaker for today is reasonably familiar to everybody. Kim S. Holbrook, who will share her personal story of the beginnings of her religious education journey as a lifelong Unitarian and Universalist. She will focus the service on her Unitarian roots, her family influences, and what it was like growing up in a Unitarian church. She will also share several ways that she believes that sets us apart from most other religions. Now, as Charlie comes forward to light our chalice, let's all say here and from our homes the words for lighting our chalice. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, to share. I invite you to join us in saying our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is a sacrament. To dwell together in peace, seek the truth and freedom, and to help our neighbor. These ends we covenant one with another. Now it's time for our opening song, and this is one of both Kim and mine's personal favorites, and you'll certainly recognize it as you'll see in the order of service. It's one of our UU rituals, both within this church and within the broader UU community. But as we sing it today as an actual hymn instead of just a part of the service, I want you to pay special attention to the actual words we sing every day and let them sink in a little bit. So please rise and bow to your spirit as we sing our opening song, number 123, Spirit of Life. Whole new experience singing and standing up. For our words of meditation today, I wanted to share some of my personal experience being a UU, as I am also a lifelong UU, much like Kim. So like Kim, I also grew up as a UU, actually as a UU, not a Unitarian. Working with her over the course of the service, I realized just how common some of the experiences were across both time and geographies of being a Unitarian. I grew up Unitarian a little bit south of here, down in Lynchburg, Virginia. Some of you might know Liberty is right around there. So I was surrounded primarily in school by people of other faiths, mainly Southern Baptists. And while not much of a rebellious youth that I was, I certainly had some ideological tussles with my classmates as I worked to define what I believed to be true. But the biggest thing I took away from my experience and the conversations with my classmates with divergent views, informed by my upbringing as a UU, was one thing really, well, probably multiple things, but one thing mainly, and that was respect. I certainly didn't always agree with their thoughts or opinions, as many who have had conversations with a lot of Southern Baptists will attest to. And Lord knows I tried to change their minds. But in my interactions, I always maintained a respect for their rights to live and believe as they choose, and respect for their rights to voice their opinions. Maybe most importantly, these experiences taught me to respectfully disagree, that we can diverge in thoughts and beliefs and still respect the humanity in each other. Now please join me in a moment of meditation.
I have often been asked what it was like growing up as a Unitarian. The first thing that always comes to mind is that it is never boring and often inspirational and fun. Our first teachers in our lives are our parents before we are old enough or wise enough to make our own decisions. I come from a long line of educators, and today my story, being raised as a Unitarian, begins before I was even born. I'm not exactly sure when my parents became Unitarians, but it was sometime in the first decade after World War II. Dad probably attended the Congregational Church in his small town of Cornwall, Connecticut, and Mom attended St. Joseph's Episcopal Chapel on the campus of a prep school where her father taught in the neighboring town of Kent. Both my parents served our country during World War II. At the age of 19, after attending the elite Catherine or Katie Gibbs Secretarial School in New York City, some of you might remember that, my mother worked as a highly placed secretary for the War Department in intelligence. At the age of 21, my father, 2 months after getting his bachelor's degree from Yale University at Saybrook College in August of 1941, he was drafted into the United States Army as a private, and on moral and religious grounds, he registered as a conscientious objector. Imagine what a challenging time that was for him. What made it even more difficult was being separated from his sweetheart by being sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. However, in May of 1943, Dad got leave to travel by train back to Kent to marry my mother, with both families and some of his Army buddies attending. Almost a year later, Mom moved to North Carolina so that they could be together. Then, moving too much, I think. Then, December 1945, he was honorably discharged at the rank of Staff Sergeant. After the war, my father received 2 more degrees from Yale, including a PhD in English language, and he started looking for a job. He was offered one at Carnegie Institute of Technology, now Carnegie Mellon, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So in about 1947, my family moved to Pittsburgh. Dad was in the English department. He also worked in the president's office. And they both joined the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. Now, also, I'm going to refer to First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh as First Church, which is what everyone calls it in Pittsburgh. By that time, I had 2 older brothers, and I was born in the mid-1950s. All that I remember about my first 5 years at First Church was that it was really big, and there were a lot of people. After my father died in 1997, I became the family historian. And just last March, in 2023, my husband Charlie and I were looking through some of my dad's papers, and one of them fell to the ground. We had finally found my certificate of christening or baptism dated April 10th, 1955, by the Reverend Irving R. Murray, First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. I now had proof that I'd been born a Unitarian. So, a few days after finding it, I called First Church and spoke with Reverend Kate Walker, who, when I mentioned what information I was looking for, told me that in the 1950s, that was the heyday of the church. Now, just 3 weeks ago, in mid-January, Charlie and I drove to Pittsburgh to do some research. The first stop, of course, was at First Church. If you haven't visited that church, it is absolutely gorgeous. We highly recommend a visit. And it's a beautiful, beautiful church, and it's located near Carnegie Mellon University. The current building was built in 1904, and then the year I was born, 1954, an addition was made for the religious education department and the Sunday school. In the 1940s, First Church had been recognized a need in the community in Pittsburgh for very young children to have a safe place where they could learn. So in 1949, Morewood Nursery School was founded at First Church. It was an interfaith and interracial nursery school for ages 2 to 4.5. At 4 years old in 1958, I probably attended Morewood, along with, according to the head of school's annual report, 1 Chinese, 1 Hindu, and 7 Negro children, unquote. My schoolmates were also from various religions: 27 Protestants, 1 Baptist, 3 Methodists, 1 ethical culturalist, 17 Jews, 3 Catholics, 1 Greek Orthodox, 1 Buddhist, 1 follower of Confucius, and 12 other Unitarians, and a partridge in a pear tree. The teachers were also by design interracial and interfaith backgrounds. Talk about diversity. Our second stop in Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago was at the Heinz Center. On their 6th floor library, they had the archives of the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. Lo and behold, as my father used to say, we found a book entitled, quote, Pittsburgh's First Unitarian Church, 1820 to 1960, written by 4 members of the church, and my dad was listed as one of the authors. An amazing discovery. We soon found that Reverend Walker had not been exaggerating about the church's heyday. According to the church board minutes, we found at the close of 1959, I was there, the legal membership of the church was 1,028. And there were 700 children in the Sunday school with 150 volunteers and 50 different classes. In 1958, the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh did a survey asking this question of the membership, quote, what previous religion had you been affiliated with before becoming a Unitarian? The results of that survey at First Church at Pittsburgh resulted in only 36 members who had always been Unitarian in 1958. I would like to conduct now the same survey here in this church. In a moment, I will ask everyone that would like to participate, it is voluntary, to raise your hands. As your previous religion or belief is called, please lower your hands. And the question is, again, what previous religion had you been affiliated with before becoming a Unitarian? So if everybody wants to participate, raise your hands. Okay, here we go. Baptist, Buddhist, Catholic, oh, there's a big one. Church of Christ, Christian Science, Congregational, Disciples of Christ, Hindu, Episcopal, did I say that? Jewish, Latter-day Saints, Lutheran, Methodist, Presbyterian, Seventh-day Adventist, atheist, and any other religion I have not called except for Unitarian or Universalist or UUs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? 5? 1, 2. Corey. I caught Corey. 1, 2, 3. 5? Did we get 5? Okay, 5. Isn't that interesting? In 2024. This, my friends, is one of the things that differentiates us from most other religious organizations. In every single congregation that I have been a member of, or there have been less than 10% who have always been Unitarian Universalists. For whatever reason or reasons, you have made your choice and you have chosen to part with this faith. When you were young, most of you probably attended a Sunday or Bible school or some other religious education program. Some of you may have stayed in the same faith well into your adulthood. Would it surprise you to learn that 90% or higher of our membership in almost all of our congregations in the UU faith are composed of what I call religious refugees? People who have, like my parents, for one reason or another, rejected a more strict and personally confining dogmatic religion and practice. The dictionary defines dogma as, quote, a set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true, unquote. Therefore, many of you may have rejected strict religious dogma, or perhaps you've been rejected by the leaders of your former religion, or perhaps you searched for a more spiritually fulfilling life instead. You are or have searched for a new religious home, and hopefully you found it here at the UCSV. We are today members and friends of a more liberal religion, and we are indeed seekers. When I was almost 6 years old, my father having received his PhD, began looking for a full professorship position, and in the summer of 1960, our entire family of 5 plus our dog loaded up in our Ford Fairlane with playing cards, singing songs, listening to the radio, and sleeping most of the way. We drove to the new home in the wilds of Wisconsin. Dad began, no chuckles? Wow. Dad began teaching English literature at Lawrence College in Appleton, Wisconsin, a town of about 60,000 people. This is where I began my true religious education as a Unitarian. What a different experience from Pittsburgh. By this time, my brother showed no interest in religion. My mother quickly got involved in the civil rights movement locally and statewide, as my father did. However, he focused on his new job and the growth of a new local Unitarian fellowship. He had found a very small group of a dozen or so that's just starting out the fellowship. It was several towns away, and we drove about 30 miles every Sunday to meet at the local library. Sound familiar? Over the years, our fellowship met in a wide variety of locations, some better than others. So who taught me about Unitarianism? Back then, almost everyone I knew went to a church, synagogue, mosque, or other religious meeting place every weekend. Of my best friends, one was Presbyterian, one was Congregationalist, one was Episcopalian. And then they all went to the largest church in town, and they also had the largest Sunday schools. Kids at school often asked me about my church, and when I told them I was a Unitarian, they'd look at me and say, "What is that?" Or, "What do you believe in?" Or, "Where is your church?" Or, they would just laugh and walk away and shaking their heads. Back then, there was no World Wide Web or resources other than books and people to help me speak about my religion. I learned quickly that my liberal religious education was unique. One day, a friend of mine complained to me that in her church, she felt pressured into believing things that she did not understand or could not relate to at all. She went on to say that her Bible study class made her feel like a horse being led down a path with blinders on. That stuck with me. She continued, "I can't relate to anything they are teaching me. They say that our way is the only way and the right way. And that's how we live our lives. But when I ask questions about Jesus or God or my own religion, they tell me not to question it." I thought about that for a while, and finally I blurted out, "Take the blinders off." There are so many other wonderful religions out there to learn from and about. She paused and then looked at me and said, "How would you know?" And I said, "Because at my church, we not only study about Unitarianism, but we learn about many of the world's religions to better understand God, Jesus, Muhammad, and other religious leaders, and as well as how to be the best people we can be in our community. We also respect people of the world who are different from us and respect the planet that we live on." She just looked at me for a moment, then rolled her eyes and walked away. But the fact is, I got her point because I couldn't relate either, especially when I attended a Catholic service delivered all in Latin. But years later, she told me that our conversation that day helped broaden her view of religion and that she had immediately started asking more questions at Sunday school and not less. I'm very grateful for the diversity of my religious education experience as a child, and that our religious education is pretty unique. And best of all, that I was taught mostly by those religious refugees who had taken off their blinders. So in conclusion, in 1961, we still had a lay-led congregation of 30 or so members, but it was a big year for the UUA, which was formed that year. Not long after that, the UAA, the consolidation or the merger of the Unitarian and Universalist faiths sent out consolidated and refined Sunday school programs focusing on studying not only our own religion, but most of the world's religions. By the time I was a teenager in Wisconsin, sometimes with my RE class and sometimes with my parents or friends, I had attended every single church, fellowship, synagogue, or mosque in town and in the area at least once. It was fascinating to learn about the other beliefs and practices and rituals observed at each. What I learned from those experiences has served me well in my entire life. It was because of my parents and my Unitarian religious education teachers, those refugees, that I was able to develop not only my own set of ethics and moral character, but also my religious convictions. Because of the decisions my mom and dad made when I was young, I am still in this faith, having seen all those others, and I'm still very proud to be a Unitarian Universalist.
Thank you for that. I don't know if I told you this when we were prepping, but both of my parents came over to UU in the church in Madison.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the Frank Lloyd Wright building.
That's a beautiful church.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh, definitely. Purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. We will now gratefully receive an offering to sustain this self-supporting church and its ministries within and beyond our walls. If you happen to be watching from online, we ask that you consider making an offering through our webpage, uushenandoah.org. If you're visiting us today for the first time, you're our welcome guest. Please feel free to let the plate pass you by. Now for our closing song, we have another classic from both UU services as well as immortalized by Mr. Cat Stevens. One of my favorites growing up, and maybe hopeful that we have warmer weather coming. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing hymn number 38 from the gray hymnal, Morning Has Broken. Now, as Charlie comes back to extinguish his chalice, let's say together the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Saying any? Our closing words today come from the Unitarian minister, Reverend Irving R. Murray, that Kim referenced in her message. From his November 1st, 1953 service, Guest Sunday at the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh, titled, "You Don't Have to Steal Them." We do not suppose the world might be a better place if there were fewer Presbyterians in it. All we claim is that it would be a better place if there were more Unitarians. So you don't have to steal them away from some other church on Guest Sunday. On the contrary, you can show your Unitarian face to the world boldly, even proudly. No need to apologize for asking a man to look into the church of Newton, Priestley, Darwin, Steinmetz, Milton, Holmes, Emerson, Longfellow, Lowell, Hawthorne, Mann, Howe, Anthony, Fuller, Dix, Jefferson, and Adams, Kiplinger, Frank Lloyd Wright, Adlai Stevenson, and many others. You don't have to steal them from the Baptists or the Methodists. God bless them, and may their churches prosper too. You have friends who are unchurched and Unitarians without knowing it. Talk Unitarianism with them and invite them to visit. And as a send-off, may all our hours together be blessed as this one has been, by open-hearted sharing, learning from one another, and making beautiful harmonies together. And may we greet everyone we encounter with the same acceptance and grateful kinship until we meet again. Blessed be.